Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining me on Real Talk NFT. I'm your host, Brian, and we have a really special guest here for you today. It's Sam Huber, who's the CEO of LandVault. LandVault's a really unique company. It's a complete tech stack where you can build, you can deploy, you can monetize within a virtual world. They're actually coining that as the 3D internet. Sam, awesome to have you here. How you been?
Thanks for having me. I've been doing really, really well.
Great. Well, let's jump into it a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your background in blockchain, crypto, NFTs. I don't know a lot about like your background, so would love to hear about it.
Yeah, I've actually been in the crypto space, I guess, for almost 10 years now. Bought my first Bitcoin back in 2013 and I think Ethereum 2018, 2017. So very, very early. But at the time, it was mainly passive investment. I remember buying on website like Mongox, and there were some horror stories and at the back of that. And when people say that Web3 is unsafe, you should have seen it, 10 years ago. That was another level. So that was, something I was always interested in, and always wanted to be a part of it, but I didn't really know necessarily how big it was going to get. It just felt like an interesting thing to play with. And on the side, I was working on a gaming company, which kind of evolved through times and eventually became LandVault. And I think what's really exciting now is we can see that the two trends. One side is gaming technologies like Unity, Unreal, real-time 3D engines, and then the blockchain are converging. And that convergence is really where, for us, we call that the 3D internet. I think this is where the magic happens, where you can have a richer internet with 3D content, but that is all powered by the blockchain, and therefore enables the ability for creators to truly own their content and run a fair internet. So that's the part where we're just, I guess, scratching the surface. But LandVault is really operating at the intersection of these two companies.
So yeah, you've been in crypto from the early days. I was actually mining Bitcoin. It wasn't very successful. Overworked a hard drive, lost my private keys. I was mining it in 2012, 2013. I contributed to losing a fair amount of Bitcoin and got a little frustrated. But when people talk about how like difficult it is to onboard a new user, which I'm very sympathetic to because I've onboarded a lot of new people. I'm like, you should have saw it 5 or 10 years ago. It was like we were just clicking buttons.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think if you bought more than $1,000 back then, it was pure gambling, right? You would put your
Yeah.
card details in a terrible website and not really understand what you would get back. But yeah, I mean, the industry has come a long way when you see that, for sure.
All right, just kind of getting back to LandVault. I think it's a really cool project. I've actually done some before we were meeting here. Obviously, I looked through it, but I actually have seen this, through my due diligence. I've recognized your company and really think it's an awesome product. Could you, go 1 inch deep and tell us all about it and why it's beneficial to our audience?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a history so you understand how we came up with the stack and the strategy. So the story actually started under a different name called AdMix. That was the first name of the company back in 2018. It was still in the video game industry, and I was just basically on the back of creating my own indie game studio. And we had some successes selling some of our top games, but also a lot of crappy game ideas that didn't go anywhere. But what I realized through that experience was the need for tools for creators to monetize the content in better ways. And we came up with a concept to make advertising better. Because if you've seen how advertising works in most games, those are those terrible intrusive ads on top of the phone where
Oh
you
yeah.
end up seeing the ad, you can't play the game, and it interrupts your play, and you end up spending more time looking at the ad than playing the game. So our idea at the
Awful.
time was, what if ads could actually become part of the content, like a product placement? So if you are playing a football game, the ads around the stadium could be real-time advertising that would be relevant to you. It's part of the experience, but it's also an ad. So it's real estate that the game developer could monetize. And this is where we started having this idea that those virtual spaces, this virtual real estate, is valuable if you have millions and millions of users. It doesn't matter if it's virtual. It's still a place where brands could, pay you to be there, or you could run transactions. So it's when we started having this idea that virtual real estate was valuable. So that's the company. That was the company at the time. We were partnering with games on one side and partnering with brands on the other side, and basically become a market maker or a marketplace to basically enable brands to place their logos or their products in the space that those games had. And at the peak, we had about 700 games, mainly mobile games, who were really trying to monetize. We built a complete SDK for creators where they could simply identify areas of the game they wanted to sell and so on. So that was purely gaming. And then, the blockchain wave kind of caught us, and then Facebook rebranded into Meta, and all these events mean that we had a lot of demands from our clients, the brands, the, McDonald's, the Coca-Cola, and so on, to do more than just place their product in a game, but they wanted us to build complete experiences for them from scratch, which is what they could see in Roblox, in Sandbox, in Decentraland. They wanted the metaverse. They just didn't want only games. And so after a few months of deciding, are we following this trend? We basically realized that even though the metaverse was, a pretty, I guess, risky, it was a buzzword at the time. We knew that. We didn't know how long it would sustain, but we still saw that beyond the buzzword, there was real value in basically advancing our vision. The first step being just place an ad in a game. The second step is create an entire experience that is fun, that is engaging, but that is still operated by a brand. So it's the ultimate ad in a way, because it's not an ad, it's an experience, but it still, ties to the brand. So instead of just saying, buy this, it's like, have a good time, spend your time doing this, unlock rewards. By the way, remember that this is created by Nike or whatever. So that was for us an advancement in the vision. And so we decided to still keep the tech that we had at AdMix, which was this product placement technology, but then build around it, not just be this monetization platform, but has all the other tools that creators would need to first build the content, then deploy it, make it super easy to access on the web, having analytics, reporting, basically becoming this entire suite of tools that a creator would need to build a 3D experience. Because our vision is that there will be a time in the next couple of years where having a 3D experience would be as common as having a presence on Instagram, or have a website, which was what happened 20 years ago. And what made that possible was the tools, the WordPress, the Google Ads, those tools that made it really easy for anyone to just start and having their own presence, or starting taking payment with Stripe or Shopify. You don't need to spend millions building a website anymore. You can just immediately start selling things. So that tech stack did not exist for 3D. And this is basically what LandVault wants to build. So that's kind of how the story changed over time. The vision is still the same. It's like 3D worlds, 3D real estate is important and will be more and more important. But over time, we decided to build more and more tools. And today, really interestingly, we found that the early adopters of those tools are in the Middle East. This is why I'm based in Dubai. We work a lot with the government here, Saudi, Abu Dhabi, Dubai. They love to promote their region. They love to promote, what they are building, the new real estate development and so on, to the rest of the world. And they found that 3D experiences are just one of the best ways to do that. So that's the whole journey. And it took us pretty far from where we started. But at the same time, the fundamentals are still the same. And it's really all about the growth of this, the 3Dification of the internet, which has started with gaming and now is going even beyond that.
Yeah, I love to see how you guys seems like extremely sharp, and you can pivot to like where the industry is going. You called out like metaverse is a buzzword, but you see overall like a 3D world, or I love the term 3D internet that you call it, is going to only be beneficial to big brands and anybody that wants to, have an immersive experience for their customer moving forward. So it's really cool that you're helping people build this and be able to deploy it. So you say, so is there no code necessary? It's pretty simple for the average person to build. How's the integral details work there?
Yeah, that's a good question. We try to keep it as simple as possible in terms of integration, but we also realize that to build amazing 3D experiences, it's really difficult to go and to make it and to really simplify it. So we made a decision not to reinvent the wheel. There are two amazing tools for creating 3D content. You might have guessed it's Unity and Unreal. They basically control, 95% of the market or something. So going against those would make no sense from our perspective. And I'm pretty convinced that the 3D internet will be basically run by these two companies, because the tools that they have is just amazing. And so instead of rebuilding that, we are building extensions and SDKs and tools to simplify the build, or accelerate things, for example, using generative AI, but always on top of those two engines. So we use those engines as partners, and then we build extensions on top of that. But we do have other part of the stack, for example, the deployment, where normally to deploy a metaverse experience or a game, it's fairly complex. You need to build an app, you need to submit it to the store, and that's okay if it's a game that consumers are going to spend hours and hours playing. They're willing to download the app and spend time on it. But if it's an experience that is a brand experience, you might spend maybe an hour on it. Getting people to download an app for a shorter experience is a lot of work, and we know how difficult and saturated the app store is. So from our perspective, it needs to be on the web. This is how the metaverse or the 3D internet will be democratized, and everyone will have access to it. It will be a link, just like you go to realtalknft.com or any website. You'll be able to go to that, but you'll be immersed into a 3D experience. But it's still on the browser. It's the tool that you know. You don't need to download anything new. And to make that work is fairly difficult because, as we know, the browser is not really made for 3D. So we have built tools here where instead of spending hours and hours on Amazon to deploy your content and geolocalize it and make sure it's always optimized based on where you are in the world, all of that is taken care of by our system. You basically connect your 3D files and you get a link, and that link is immediately playable. So there are bits like this that are no code completely, and there are some that are closer to the creation where you still need to be an expert. I mean, you still need to know what you're doing. And I think this is true on the traditional internet today. You can do things in WordPress, but generally you can spot those websites, from a little far, that they're not built in a custom way. And that's okay. There's an internet for professionals. There's for amateurs. It's totally fine. I think when it comes to 3D, it's going to be the same concept. And if you really want the best of the best, and our client being big corporations they're going to need to rely on pretty advanced game engines.
Yeah. Just looking at your website, it just feels like your entire platform has a little bit different vibe to it, in a good way. Tell me the difference, or like really our audience, the difference between what you're doing at LandVault and the larger metaverses out there, like the Decentraland and Sandbox. What's the big difference between LandVault and those two major players?
Yeah, so it's really completely different in the sense that we're not a platform trying to attract creators to build in one space. We don't have land. We're not selling land. We're just technology. So if you are a government or a big brand and you want to create your own virtual world, you might want a presence in those platforms that you mentioned. But generally, and we see that more and more, brands want to actually own the content and have it on their website. It's basically the same as, do you want to have your own website where you can control the content, you can monetize everything, you can sell your product, or do you want to run your business from Facebook or another social media platform? So we see the platforms that you mentioned as, own and operated kind of walled gardens, a bit like social media. And what we're building is the 3D internet, which is open. Everyone should be able to own their own piece of content, monetize it the way you want. So we just give you the tools to do that, to create your own 3D world, to put it on your own website, then you own everything there. Whereas the other platforms are saying, come to our walled garden. It's called the Sandbox. It's called Decentraland. This is your land in our platform. Come build here. And I think there is space for both, by the way. We own a lot of land. We've been talking about land. Obviously, land is not it's been up and down, but I still think there is value in owning that real estate. It comes back to that concept of real estate in the virtual world. If the platforms become popular, having access to the best location, which gives you a huge amount of traffic. But I think a lot of that traffic will be sent to the white label solution that, the kind of technology that we are building, because eventually brands and clients will want to have more control and not just be limited and living within someone else's garden, but actually have that concept of 3D internet, which should be open. So that's the main difference. We provide technology, and we're not, selling land or asking for people to come and spend time in our own ecosystem. They are just tools that they can use to build their own worlds and then take care of that themselves.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a truly customizable experience for every brand or whoever wants to get involved. It's not like you're pigeonholed into like voxels or anything along those lines. So, tell me about some of the use cases you see for LandVault. I understand like the Decentraland and the sandbox with gaming and just like a place to almost like meet up in the virtual world. I hear about like concerts, but I saw on your website just I thought some of the most interesting use cases were real estate and how you could look at real estate real time. I would love for you to be able to touch on that because I think it's really interesting for the audience.
Yeah, real estate, urban development, those are actually some of the biggest use cases. I would say that this is pretty typical to where we are, right? So I'm based in Dubai, and we do a lot of business in the Middle East across Qatar, Saudi, and so on. And, those countries are developing really, really fast. They're building a lot of physical real estate. As you said, stadium, it could be, just residential or amazing parks and things. And they see that the 3D internet is a way for them to first visualize that before it's built, because some of those projects are ongoing for 3, 4, 5 years. What is the best way to show an investor or a future consumer, someone you want to sell a unit to, how this thing is going to look like? You can do renders. It's 2D. It's just a static picture. Or you can send people a link and they can literally have a feel for what it would be to walk in that space. And it's the same with urban development if you're building a complete city, for example. So this is really the main use case. It's still marketing, but it's really more like a tourism type of marketing where you're trying to showcase what you have built at a government level and try to attract potential consumers, potential visitors, investors through that. So those are the biggest projects that we have by far, generally at the government level, and I think it makes sense. It's just a new channel that those countries have understood they could leverage. That go, we started with pictures, then we had videos, and that is the next step. It's a 3D experience. You are literally inside the content. So to me, this is a natural evolution of having more and more immersive content to promote things. And I think that's why we're super bullish on the 3D internet generally.
Yeah, it looks great. Your graphics are outstanding. It really kind of speaks to me. And I don't know why. Like I see tons of use cases on your website, but the real estate just seems to really like click for me. Even do you see it like being an advantage as like for the retail customer? Like how like Zillow, you can like tour a house in 3D, but when you do it, I just bought a house recently a year ago, and it was like every room felt different. Really couldn't figure out the size, and I even remember telling my wife, I was like, "Man, I wish there was like It was far where we were buying it. I was like, I wish there was a way for me to like see this better. This is cool, but it doesn't. It like you're on Google Maps trying to get a look at it. Is that a path you see as like a retail real estate could go down?
That's definitely one of the use case for sure. I mean, it's all about that concept of having a richer internet, or a way to be able to see how things would be like. I think there's a lot of things that we do on the internet which doesn't need 3D, like going onto your banking app and transferring money to a friend. You can have a couple of fields. It doesn't need to be 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that we do which is more experiential, which could be, as you said, looking at a new house, a new car, or maybe jewelry, or just trying to see which is the best hotel for your holidays. Do you want this one or do you want this one? from picture, sometimes you don't really know what you're getting. But if you have a way to see the view or visit the room and have a feel for the space, this is something that you could do in 5 minutes, and that would get you a much better sense of what that property is like. So I think a lot of the things that we do online right now are quite experiential, and that's the part where 3D makes sense. We're not saying that all the internet will be three-dimensional and that we'll be here on Squadcast in 3D, because maybe we don't need that. But there are a lot of things that actually having that third dimension removed in the screen, because we are used to 3 dimensions around us in the physical world, and having that back into the internet, I think will help and just make things more natural, and overall just create more value for consumers, as you said, because it would make things more tangible, more logical sometimes. And I think people will be able to make better decisions.
Yeah, well said. What's some of the biggest challenges you've had? The NFT market's been a little bearish recently, and the term metaverse. Yeah, trying to be nice here. I'm a big NFT guy and big blockchain guy, but it's been slightly bearish, and even like metaverse, that term has been thrown around a lot, and I love the term, like I said earlier in the call, like virtual world or 3D internet. But how do you see, like, what are some of the biggest challenges, like onboarding new users?
Biggest challenges is that it's still new, right? And when you talk about the 3D internet to people, most people don't really know why they need it until you start showing them, use cases and experiences. But even then, it's like, okay, but who has done it? Has this yield any kind of result? Especially when you're selling to urban, developers, real estate companies, like their cycles are quite long. So they're looking for someone that has done it. Have they been able to sell more units, or did this attract more tourists over a 2 to 3 year period? And in a lot of cases, that data just isn't available because we're just at the very, very beginning. So I think that's just the inherent, difficulties of building something new, especially when the general climate, like right now, we are in a little bit of a downturn. Generally, companies are taking less risks. So it just makes it a little more challenging for sure. And it's we've definitely leveraged the bull curve when specifically when Facebook rebranded into Meta. Again, we knew this was potentially a gimmick, but it's still one of the biggest company in the world, and we did leverage that to build on the back of that and establish LandVault as the largest metaverse company and so on. So we leveraged the up, and now we are of course subject to what's happening when the market goes down. But through that, we really stayed focused on fundamentals, and the fundamentals for me is real-time 3D is bringing a richer experience. The blockchain can bring a fairer experience. So we are building a richer and fairer internet. That is actually the vision that we have at LandVault. And this is regardless of the price of Bitcoin. This is regardless of the price of land, of scams that are happening, which are obviously a terrible thing. But we are really looking at the fundamentals and, really constantly sense checking. Are we doing this because the market's telling us that, or are we actually building something that we really believe in? And to me, the opportunity to build a different internet, a fairer internet, richer internet, that just hasn't happened since the internet was created. There has been very little changes actually to the fabric of the internet. Lots of applications, lots of obviously many more websites and many more things that you can do, but it's still the way that you browse it through a 2D browser that hasn't changed. That's never been challenged. So I think for the very first time, there is that opportunity to actually change the fabric of the internet, the language of the internet, and create a different window into that content by bringing a third dimension. So to me, that's just a huge opportunity. It's just very, very exciting. And so that, that makes up for all the challenges that we're going through.
Love it. I love it. Again, I'm a big fan. It's I don't know. Everyone needs to check out the website. I'll make sure I put the links down below. But the website just, I don't know. It looks cool. Like, 3D internet just speaks to me. Whoever your marketing team is, whoever came up with that, I was reading about it, and you're like naming it the 3D internet. I was like, oh yeah, like that kind of
it makes it a bit more clearer, right? As you said, metaverse is what is it, right? Metaverse. Some you ask people, they tell you, oh, it's VR. Some people think
Yeah.
it's just Facebook. Some people don't know. So we wanted to kind of get out of that term that has been thrown around, and as you said, in very different ways, and just describe something that people will understand. And if you say 3D internet, people can immediately think, okay, that makes sense. I have played games before. I understand what it is. And actually, it's more of an evolution than this crazy thing like Ready Player One, where most people do not actually want to live like that. But having parts of the internet that is three-dimensional, so you can have a better experience, that seems a lot less overwhelming. So this is it still requires a lot of technology to make it work, and that's really what we're focused on.
Yeah, I don't know. Me just personally trying to explain the metaverse to somebody who isn't blockchain native, like, my father, for instance. I was explaining it to him. He's like, I don't get it. I was like, well, let me give you another example. And I'm giving examples. And he's like, I don't get it. He's like, what's this term, meta what? And I was like, so I don't, I definitely, I'm going to pitch him on the 3D internet later today, and I'll let you know how it goes. But
let me know how it goes. If it's
I,
faster, that's the goal. That's if people know what it is, that's 50% of the work. So I'm glad that it's. I'm hopeful that it will work with him as well.
I think it will. We'll see. We're a little thick out there, though. We don't come from a strong one of the last questions I have for you. Just curious if there's any brands or individuals that you have worked with or you are working with. I know you're in Dubai right now. That's just utilizing LandVault, and just a little sneak peek of what's happening.
Yeah, so last year we worked with a lot of Fortune 500 brands in the US and in Europe. So Standard Chartered, L'Oreal, Red Bull. We worked with MasterCard and so on. And those really wanted to build generally marketing campaigns leveraging at the time the metaverse. So those were shorter term projects and launching something and creating the buzz about it. And this year has been working more with the local governments here. So different ministries from tourism to finance, and really trying to focus on actual use cases that those ministries have. And generally it's about promoting it to the rest of the world and see how you can leverage three-dimensional experiences and gamification to create good engagement and basically use a new channel to promote these things. Just not just a video or a social media post, but actually going a little bit deeper into engagement and create something that would be fun to play, for exciting, and also give you a positive vision of the client.
Nice. Well, yeah, I love what you're building. I think it's a really unique product. You're extremely sharp looking into the company. It just looks like you're really on the right path here, and building in a bear as we coin it. You're definitely doing that, my friend.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'll certainly put all the links down below for everyone to check it out. Want to make sure it's landvault.io, but I'm going to put some more links down below the video for everyone to check it out. I highly recommend it, especially if you're interested in virtual worlds and the 3D internet, metaverses. It's just a really unique platform, and just a good site to check out. It looks like a lot of fun. Really got my brainwaves going. So Sam, really appreciate you joining us today. I think everyone's
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Of course.
Same here. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks.